Yo, what's going on, Blackish University? It's your boy B back at you with another reaction. This one's a little bit different. If you're like me, we like breaking down the lyrics, right? I checked out, if you listen to Black Thought, we've been listening to Toby, and you'll hear some rappers reference Mansa Musa. I hope I'm saying that properly. And, if you're like me, I like having a good breakdown of the lyrics. I like understanding actually the message that's in the lyrics. And Mansa Musa, for those that don't know, he was one of the wealthiest people, if not the wealthiest person to ever live. And the reason that people like Black Thought reference him is because he was a ruler in Africa. These are years and years ago, if I'm not mistaken. It was the 13th century. And it's really hard to estimate wealth at that time. But some estimates put him around $500 billion. Yeah, billion. And again, it's hard to put an exact number on that. But he had the closest thing. It was unimaginable wealth, right? There's the stories about him passing out gold bars, and there's even a saying that says that he built a mosque every Friday. It's just something he did as a hobby. He went around, but he also was responsible for setting up Timbuktu as just kind of a hub spot that wasn't just educational, but there were merchants, there were intellectuals that would come there, and it was also somewhere where they could practice Islam or being a Muslim, right? But they made it like a go-to place. He put it on the map, but he also, I've heard arguments that, he did this pilgrimage, right? That when you're a Muslim, you have to go. I think it's called Hajj, where you have to go to Mecca. You have to do it once in your lifetime. It's a very spiritual, religious event. And when he did that, they said that he had like thousands of people in his entourage, and he brought tons of gold. He was passing out gold to everyone, really demonstrating his wealth. He brought tons of animals with him, tons of people, all that were well fed. He had a variety of different slaves, all that were dressed in silk. And there were a lot of people, and I shouldn't say this, one would argue that you wouldn't call them slaves, right, if they were paid for their work. And again, I don't know the entire dynamic there, but this is what he refers to when he says Mansa Musa. And it's not something you learned, right, in regular education, social studies, even history classes don't address this. So I wanted to show you guys a quick video of who one of the wealthiest person in our history was. And you think about it, ask the questions as to why. Why is it that people don't want you to know about this? Or it's just not widespread knowledge? Like, why isn't it something that's taught? But without further ado, let's learn a bit more about Mansa Musa.
If someone asked you who the richest people in history were, who would you name? Perhaps a billionaire banker or corporate mogul like Bill Gates or John D. Rockefeller.
Jeff Bezos.
How about African King Musa Kita I? Ruling the Mali Empire in the 14th century CE, Mansa Musa, or the King of Kings, amassed a fortune that possibly made him one of the wealthiest people who ever lived. But his vast wealth was only one piece of his rich legacy. When Mansa Musa came to power in 1312,
and just before this video gets started, I want to reference, from what I know about him, I don't know what they're going to bring up. It's a short video, so I'm sure they can't highlight everything. But he wasn't just someone that displayed his wealth. He did a lot of good in the community, from building universities and schools to one of the largest libraries at the time anywhere on the planet. So again, I just want to reference, when you hear people say that, they trace their history back to slavery, right? And it's like, well, there's so much more about our history that you might not even be aware of. When you hear people say black people are kings, right? We're kings, we're queens. This is what they're referring to, and it's a lot of lost knowledge that a lot of kids simply don't understand. Maybe never even heard of, and that might not even be their fault, rather the education system that really has a much based upon European history, right, and what became U.S. history, not the history of Africans or African Americans.
Much of Europe was racked by famine and civil wars, but many African kingdoms and the Islamic world were flourishing, and Mansa Musa played a great role in bringing the fruits of this flourishing to his own realm. By strategically annexing the city of Timbuktu and re-establishing power over the city of Galle, he gained control over important trade routes between the Mediterranean and the West African coast, continuing a period of expansion which dramatically increased Mali's size. The territory of the Mali Empire was rich in natural resources, such as gold and salt. The world first witnessed the extent of Mansa.
And you really can't underestimate the value of salt. Gold is always gold, right? But remember, something's as valuable as somebody's willing to pay for it. And at that time, I don't know the exact number, but salt was something that I know most people think of salt in today's terms, but back then it meant so much more.
Mansa Musa's wealth in 1324, when he took his pilgrimage to Mecca. Not one to travel on a budget, he brought a caravan stretching as far as the eye could see. Accounts of this journey are mostly based on an oral testimony and differing written records, so it's difficult to determine the exact details. But what most agree on is the extravagant scale of the excursion. Chroniclers describe an entourage of tens of thousands of soldiers, civilians, and slaves, 500 heralds, bearing gold staffs and dressed in fine silks, and many camels and horses bearing an abundance of gold bars. Stopping in cities such as Cairo, Mansa Musa is said to have spent massive quantities of gold, giving to the poor, buying souvenirs, and even having mosques built along the way. In fact, his spending may have destabilized the regional economy, causing mass inflation. This journey reportedly took over a year, and by the time Mansa Musa returned, tales of his amazing wealth had spread to the ports of the.
I don't know, it doesn't look like this video is going to reference it, but it tells you a bit about Mansa Musa if we expand on that. What he did when he was passing out so much gold that it actually destabilized the price of gold in that region. So you imagine if there's this influx of gold, now all of a sudden you have inflation. So the price to buy other goods has skyrocketed because they now know that all of these people have gold. And he knew that. So one thing that he did, and again, it just shows you the type of person that he was, legend has it that he actually traveled, when he came back through that region, he tried to buy back as much of the gold as he could. And he did it at really, really high interest rates, so people would make a lot of money, if that makes sense. So he tried to buy back as much as they could as they were headed back, and because he understood that there was so much involved that it was really destroying local economies. There's a lot more that goes into that. I know this is a much shorter video, but I just wanted to highlight that because I think it gives you some insight to his character.
The Mediterranean. Mali and its king were elevated to near legendary status, cemented by their inclusion on the 1375 Catalan Atlas. One of the most important world maps of medieval Europe, it depicted the king holding a scepter and a gleaming gold nugget. Mansa Musa had literally put his empire and himself on the map. But material riches weren't the king's only concern. As a devout Muslim, he took a particular interest in Timbuktu, already a center of religion and learning prior to its annexation. Upon returning from his pilgrimage, he had the great Djinguereber Mosque built there with the help of an Andalusian architect. He also established a major university, further elevating the city's reputation and attracting scholars and students from all over the Islamic world. Under Mansa Musa, the empire became urbanized, with schools and mosques in hundreds of densely populated towns. The king's rich legacy persisted for generations, and to this day there are mausoleums, libraries, and mosques that stand as a testament to this golden age of Mali's history.
And again, that's deep. It's something small, but you have to think, if this isn't in our history books and it's not common knowledge, how is it that this information gets down to our youth? So when they want to, when they say something like, I want to be rich like Jeff Bezos, or I want to be like Bill Gates, there's other people that they might not even be aware of in their own history. So just thought I'd share that. I know I've heard Black Thought reference him once or twice, so I thought it was important not just for this, but for the breakdown, to make it common knowledge and have something that we can kind of memorialize in case we need to revisit, or other people might hear the name and want to look it up. So, hey, don't forget to like and subscribe, especially if you like checking out new music, spoken word, variety of different topics that we go over on the station, and look forward to it.